The morning air hung thick with dust and tension as Master Sergeant Jake Morrison pressed his back against the crumbling concrete wall. 3 blocks into the urban maze of Kandahar, his Delta Force team had walked straight into hell. The intel was wrong. Dead wrong. What should have been a simple extraction had become a carefully orchestrated trap, with enemy snipers positioned in a perfect triangle around their location. Morrison keyed his radio with trembling fingers. "Control, this is Reaper 6. We are pinned down hard. Multiple sniper positions. Need immediate support." The response crackled back through static. "Reaper 6, all air assets are 20 minutes out. Hold your position." 20 minutes might as well have been 20 hours. Specialist Davis was already bleeding out behind an overturned car, his leg shattered by a precision shot that had come from impossible range. The enemy knew exactly where they were, had probably been tracking them since insertion. Before we continue with this intense rescue mission, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have heard stories of impossible military heroics in your area. Morrison could hear the distinctive crack of high-powered rifles echoing off the buildings. Each shot was calculated, methodical. These were not random insurgents with AK-47s. These were trained marksmen with high-end equipment, and they had all the time in the world to pick his team apart one by one. The sergeant counted at least 4 distinct firing positions, each one covering a different escape route. They were trapped in a kill box with nowhere to run and ammunition running dangerously low. Morrison had been in firefights before, but nothing like this. Nothing this precise, this coordinated, this hopeless. The next shot came without warning, sending concrete fragments exploding across Morrison's face. Corporal Martinez dove behind a rusted dumpster as another round punched through the metal just inches from his head. The sound echoed through the narrow alley like thunder, followed by the eerie silence that only comes before death. Morrison tried to get a visual on the sniper positions, but every time he exposed even an inch of himself, bullets came screaming in with surgical precision. These shooters knew their business. They had elevation, cover, and most importantly, patience. His team was running out of all 3. Davis groaned behind the car, his blood pooling on the dusty pavement. "We need to move him," Martinez whispered, but Morrison shook his head grimly. Any movement would expose them to the crosshairs waiting above. The enemy had them locked down tighter than a maximum security prison. Through his earpiece, Morrison could hear the frantic chatter from the command center. Multiple thermal signatures detected. Confirmed sniper nests at buildings 2, 7, and 12. Additional position suspected at the water tower. The voice paused. "Reaper 6, you are surrounded by at least 5 trained marksmen. Recommend you hold position until air support arrives." Morrison felt his heart sink. 5 snipers meant 5 different angles of death. Every window, every rooftop, every shadow could be hiding another rifle scope. His team of 4 was outnumbered, outgunned, and completely exposed. The next 20 minutes would either bring salvation or turn this alley into their tomb. The third shot shattered Martinez's shoulder, spinning him like a rag doll before he collapsed behind the dumpster. His scream pierced the air as Morrison watched another one of his men go down. 2 wounded, 2 still fighting, and the enemy was just getting started. Morrison pressed himself deeper into the shadows, feeling the rough, concrete scrape against his tactical vest. The snipers were methodical, professional. They were not trying to kill his team quickly. They were playing with them, taking precise shots to wound and terrorize before moving in for the final elimination. Davis was losing consciousness fast, his breathing becoming shallow and ragged. Martinez clutched his shattered shoulder, trying to stem the flow of blood with his good hand. Morrison could see the fear in both men's eyes. They all knew how this was going to end. The command center voice crackled through his earpiece again. "Reaper 6, we have visual confirmation of at least 6 sniper positions now. They have you in a complete kill box. Air support is still 15 minutes out." His heart pounded against his ribs. 6 snipers. The situation had gone from bad to impossible. Morrison tried to return fire toward one of the suspected positions, but the moment he raised his rifle, 3 bullets slammed into the wall, just above his head. The message was clear. They owned every angle, every line of sight. His team was completely at their mercy. The enemy was taking their time because they could afford to. Morrison realized with growing horror that this was not just an ambush. This was an execution, and they were simply choosing when to pull the trigger. Private Johnson, the youngest member of the team, tried to crawl toward Martinez to help with his wounded shoulder. The instant he moved, a bullet carved a groove across his helmet, missing his skull by millimeters. Johnson froze completely, his face pale with terror as he realized how close death had just passed. Morrison felt the weight of command crushing down on him. 3 of his men were wounded or pinned down, and he was powerless to help any of them. The enemy snipers had turned his elite Delta Force unit into sitting ducks, picking them apart piece by piece with surgical precision. The radio in his ear delivered more devastating news. Reaper 6, thermal imaging now shows 7 confirmed sniper positions. They have overlapping fields of fire covering every possible exit route. The voice paused ominously. We are tracking additional movement. Estimate total hostile count at 10 to 12 marksmen. Morrison closed his eyes and tried to control his breathing. 12 enemy snipers against his foreman team. The odds are beyond hopeless. They were mathematical certainties of death. Even if air support arrived in the next 10 minutes, his men would be picked off long before the cavalry could engage. Davis had stopped moving altogether behind the car. Morrison could not tell if he was unconscious or worse. Martinez was still conscious, but losing blood fast, his tactical vest soaked crimson. Johnson remained frozen in place, too terrified to move after his brush with death. The silence stretched on, broken only by the distant sound of enemy forces repositioning for better shots. Morrison knew they were preparing for the final phase of the execution. Then something impossible happened. A single rifle shot echoed across the urban landscape, different from all the others. This one came from much farther away, with a deeper, more powerful sound that seemed to shake the very air. Morrison heard a wet thud from one of the enemy sniper positions, followed by complete silence from that direction. The command center voice crackled with confusion. Reaper 6, we just lost thermal contact with sniper position number 4. Unknown shot origin. We're not showing any friendly forces in that area. Morrison pressed against the wall, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had taken out one of the enemy snipers, but who? Before he could analyze the situation further, another impossibly distant shot rang out. This time Morrison caught a glimpse of movement in a 6th-floor window as an enemy sniper suddenly pitched forward and disappeared from sight. 2 enemy marksmen down in less than 30 seconds, both killed by shots that seemed to come from nowhere. The remaining enemy snipers began firing wildly in multiple directions, no longer focused on the trapped Delta Force team. They were searching for a threat they could not locate, panic creeping into their previously methodical approach. Morrison realized that someone out there was hunting the hunters. A third shot boomed across the cityscape, and Morrison watched in amazement as muzzle flash from another enemy position simply vanished. The mysterious marksman was systematically eliminating the sniper positions with impossible precision from what had to be an extraordinary distance. For the first time in 20 minutes, Morrison felt a glimmer of hope. Someone was out there watching over them, someone with skills that defied explanation. The 4th shot came with devastating precision, and Morrison watched an entire section of rooftop where an enemy sniper had been positioned to erupt in a cloud of dust and debris. Whatever rifle was firing these shots had enough power to punch through concrete and steel like paper. The remaining enemy marksmen were no longer hunting his team. They were running for their lives. Command center chatter filled his earpiece with desperate confusion. We are detecting shots from approximately 2 miles northeast, but that distance is impossible for the accuracy we are witnessing. No known sniper system can achieve these results at that range. Morrison could hear the disbelief in the operator's voice as another enemy position went silent. Johnson finally found the courage to move, crawling toward Martinez to apply pressure to his bleeding shoulder. The enemy fire had shifted completely away from the trapped Delta Force team as the mysterious marksman continued his methodical elimination of sniper positions. Morrison seized the opportunity to check on Davis, who was still breathing but unconscious from blood loss. A fifth shot thundered across the landscape, and Morrison caught sight of an enemy sniper actually falling from a water tower in the distance. The precision was inhuman. Each shot was a perfect kill from a range that should have been impossible with any known weapon system. The mysterious shooter was not just eliminating threats. He was demonstrating a level of marksmanship that belonged in legend, not reality. The remaining enemy snipers had completely abandoned their disciplined positions and were fleeing in panic. Morrison realized that his team's salvation was coming from someone who operated on a level far beyond anything he had ever witnessed in his military career. The sixth and seventh shots came in rapid succession, each one finding its mark with surgical precision despite the impossible distance. Morrison could see enemy muzzle flashes winking out like candles being extinguished one by one across the urban landscape. The mysterious marksman was not just accurate. He was operating at a speed that defied everything Morrison knew about long-range shooting. Command center operators were frantically trying to identify their guardian angel. Reaper 6, we have no record of any friendly sniper teams in your operational area. We are showing 0 assets positioned at the estimated firing location. This shooter does not exist in our system. The voice carried a mixture of confusion and awe that Morrison had never heard from the usually professional command staff. Martinez managed to sit up against the dumpster, his shoulder bandaged with field dressing from Johnson's medical kit. He looked at Morrison with wide eyes and whispered hoarsely, "Sarge, whoever is out there just saved our lives. That shooting is not human." Morrison nodded grimly, watching another enemy position go dark in the distance. The 8th shot came with a sound like thunder, and Morrison realized the Phantom Sniper was now targeting enemy forces that were trying to retreat. A figure fell from a building 3 blocks away, tumbling through the air before hitting the ground with a distant thud. The mysterious marksman was not content with simply breaking up the ambush. He was systematically eliminating every threat in the entire area. Davis finally stirred behind the car, groaning as consciousness returned. Morrison felt a surge of relief as he realized all his men were going to survive this nightmare, thanks to someone who operated like a ghost with impossible skills. Morrison keyed his radio with trembling fingers, trying to establish contact with their mysterious savior. "Unknown marksman, this is Reaper 6. Can you identify yourself?" The response came through crystal clear on a secure military frequency that should have been impossible for anyone outside the operation to access. "Reaper 6, this is Ghost. Maintain your position for 60 more seconds while I clean up the remaining hostiles." The voice was calm, professional, and distinctly female. Morrison felt his blood run cold. Ghost was a legend in special operations circles, a sniper so skilled that her exploits bordered on mythology. But Ghost had been killed in action 2 years ago. Command center operators were frantically cross-referencing call signs. Reaper 6, negative on Ghost identification. That operative was confirmed Kia 24 months ago. No such asset is currently deployed in your area. Morrison stared at his radio in disbelief as another impossible shot echoed across the city, followed by the sound of metal hitting concrete in the distance. The voice came through his earpiece again, steady and confident. "Reaper 6, final hostile eliminated. Your extraction zone is now clear. Recommend immediate medevac for your wounded." Morrison could hear something in that voice, a weariness that spoke of battles fought in shadows and sacrifices that would never be recorded in official reports. Johnson looked at Morrison with confusion written across his young face. "Sarge, who is Ghost?" Morrison shook his head slowly, unable to process what he was hearing. Ghost was supposed to be dead, but somehow she had just eliminated an entire enemy sniper team from an impossible distance with precision that defied physics and military doctrine. The command center erupted in chaos as senior officers tried to process the impossible. We need confirmation on Ghost status immediately. Pull all classified files from Operation Nightfall. Check every database twice. Morrison could hear keyboards clicking frantically in the background as intelligence analysts scrambled to verify what they were hearing. Davis struggled to his feet with Johnson's help, blood loss making him unsteady but alive. He looked at Morrison with confusion clouding his pain-filled eyes. Did she just say ghost? The ghost. Morrison nodded grimly, remembering the stories that circulated through special operations units like whispered legends. The radio crackled again with that familiar voice. Reaper 6, be advised you have multiple inbound hostiles approximately 8 minutes out. Recommend immediate extraction to grid coordinates. I am transmitting now. Morrison felt his blood pressure spike as he realized their ordeal was far from over. Command Center confirmed the intelligence with growing amazement. Reaper 6, we are detecting vehicular movement consistent with hostile reinforcements. How did Ghost acquire this intelligence? We show no surveillance assets in that area. Morrison realized that Ghost was operating with capabilities that went far beyond extraordinary marksmanship. Martinez managed to stand, using the dumpster for support as he favored his wounded shoulder. His voice was filled with awe as he spoke. Sarge, if that is really Ghost, then we just witnessed the most legendary sniper in military history rise from the dead to save our asses. Morrison looked toward the distant building where the impossible shots had originated, wondering if he would ever get answers to the questions burning in his mind. The sound of approaching vehicles grew louder in the distance, confirming Ghost's warning with terrifying accuracy. Over the following days, Victoria found herself spending more time at the hospital than her executive schedule demanded. What had begun as a 10-minute deception had evolved into something she couldn't quite name. She arrived to find Marcus reading to her father, his calm voice bringing peace to Richard's increasingly difficult nights. You were a marriage counselor, Victoria said one evening as they sat in the hospital cafeteria. It wasn't a question. She had pieced together the clues from his intuitive responses, his natural ability to navigate emotional complexity. Marcus stirred his coffee slowly, weighing his words. For 7 years. Before Sarah died, before everything changed. Why did you stop? Hard to counsel people about saving their marriages when you couldn't save your wife from cancer. Marcus replied quietly. Lost my faith in my own advice, I suppose. Victoria leaned forward, genuinely curious for perhaps the first time in years. But you still have it, that ability to see what people need. My father trusts you more after 3 days than he's trusted anyone in months. Your father is lonely, Victoria. He's not just dying from his illness. He's dying from watching his daughter live behind walls so high she's forgotten how to let anyone in. The words stung because they were true. Victoria had built Sterling Industries into an empire, but somewhere along the way, she had forgotten how to build anything meaningful in her personal life. Is that your professional opinion, Dr. Chun? She asked, attempting lightness, but hearing the tremor in her own voice. Marcus met her eyes with gentle honesty. That's my observation as someone who learned too late that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. Richard Sterling had requested to speak with Marcus alone, and now the two men sat in the quiet hospital room as afternoon light filtered through the windows. Richard's breathing was labored, but his eyes remained clear and focused on Marcus's face. She's going to lose everything because of me, Marcus said quietly, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Her board, her company, everything she's worked for. This started as a lie, Mr. Sterling, but what I feel for her now is real. Richard studied Marcus with a shrewd perception that had built an empire. Tell me about the lie. Marcus took a deep breath and explained everything. Victoria's desperate request, the 10-minute charade that had become something genuine, the way his feelings had evolved despite his better judgment. When he finished, he waited for anger, for disappointment, for the dismissal he surely deserved. Instead, Richard smiled. You think I didn't know? Son, I've been watching people lie to me for 65 years. But I've also been watching you fall in love with my daughter and her with you. That part isn't a performance. But I've deceived you. You've protected her, Richard interrupted gently. When she asked for help, you could have walked away. Instead, you gave her something she's needed her whole life. Someone who sees her worth beyond her accomplishments. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. She's going to sacrifice everything for me, and I can't let her do that. Emma and I will be fine. We always have been. But Victoria belongs in that world. Richard reached for Marcus's hand with surprising strength. My daughter has spent 32 years trying to prove she belongs in a world that doesn't deserve her. Maybe it's time someone showed her there's a better world waiting. 6 months later, Morrison stood in a classified briefing room at Fort Bragg as a 3-star general presented him with the Distinguished Service Cross for actions under fire. But Morrison barely heard the ceremony. His mind remained fixed on that impossible day when a phantom sniper had redefined the laws of physics to save his team. The official after-action report listed the rescue as conducted by unidentified Allied forces. No mention of Ghost appeared in any document. The command center recordings had been classified so far above Morrison's clearance level that they might as well have never existed. But Morrison and his men knew the truth. Davis had made a full recovery and returned to active duty. Martinez regained full use of his shoulder after extensive physical therapy. Johnson had been promoted and transferred to an elite reconnaissance unit. All 3 men carried the same haunted look in their eyes when anyone mentioned long-range precision shooting. During the medal ceremony, Morrison noticed a woman in dress blues standing at the back of the room. She wore the insignia of a master sergeant and had the bearing of someone who had seen combat in the deepest shadows of warfare. Their eyes met for just a moment, and Morrison felt his heart skip a beat. The woman gave him an almost imperceptible nod before disappearing into the crowd of military personnel. Morrison tried to follow her, but she had vanished as completely as smoke in the wind. He never saw her again, but he knew with absolute certainty who she had been. If this story of tactical brilliance and impossible courage moved you, share your thoughts about your favorite moment, or tell us about any military legends you have heard from your community. Some heroes operate in shadows so deep that their sacrifices will never be officially recognized, but their legends live on forever.